Now that you've spent the day doing ellipses, I want to move on to hyperbolas. And we talked about what is a hyperbola. And what you want to do is you want to think of as a hyperbola is an ellipse turned inside out. So if we think of this ellipse and we turn it inside out, the shape of a hyperbola is going to be something that looks like that. So we're going to have some A's and B's again, and we're going to have centers and vertices. And the newest thing that we're going to have is asymptotes. And I'll try to explain what an asymptote again is and how we get the shape of our hyperbola. So one of the first things that we're going to have is we're going to have standard forms for hyperbolas. And again, it should look very much like an ellipse. The only difference between a hyperbola and an ellipse is this minus sign. So when you look at a standard form of a hyperbola, look for this negative or positive sign. And then again, we'll identify the center the same way that we have been identifying the center, which is HK. And the vertex or the vertices of a hyperbola are still going to be A away from the center. So we'll have a center, we'll move A away in one direction, A away in the other direction, and that will give us our vertices. And then the asymptote is a line that the hyperbola will get closer and closer to, but never touch. And let me give you that picture on the hyperbola that I drew earlier. So again, if you did not draw the hyperbola, do that. And then I'll draw in the guidelines or the lines that the curve gets closer and closer to, but never touches. So I like to think of an asymptote as a guideline, and that guideline tells me how my curve is shaped. So what I'd like to do is just give you a standard form with some numbers put in here, and then graph your first hyperbola, and then I'll give you the second form. So let's take a hyperbola x minus 2 quantity squared minus y plus 1 quantity squared. And again, these will be equal to 1. You'll have a number underneath the y, and you'll have a number underneath the x. So let's identify some things. Again, how do I know it's a hyperbola? I know it's a hyperbola with this minus sign. The center is going to work the same way that it does with the circle and the ellipse. And so what we'll do is we'll draw off the center first, which is 2, negative 1 in this case. So this is our center. And we'll learn in a minute that if x is the positive term or comes first, we're going to move in the x direction for our vertices. So how much am I going to move? Again, the square root of 16 is 4. So I'm going to move 4 to the left and 4 to the right. And those, if I ask you to label the vertices, label those points. And then we'll still go in the y direction, whatever b is. And in this case, it's 2. So we'll go up 2 and down 2. But now this is where it will be a little different. So again, you might see the ellipse in here. So if I had an ellipse, this is what our ellipse would look like. But we don't have any ellipse, we have it inside out. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn this ellipse, inside out to make our hyperbola. And we'll do that by flipping it over and flipping it over. Okay. Now where do those asymptotes come from, like I was talking about? So in a hyperbola, we're going to have what's called an asymptote, and those are guidelines. Those are guidelines that are through the center and exactly B high and B low, and that will give us our shape of how skinny or how fat to make the hyperbola. So this is your first example of a hyperbola. It looks a lot like an ellipse, but again inverted. Our A's and our B's will be similar, but we'll have asymptotes with hyperbolas and vertices only. There is no such thing as a covertice on a hyperbola. Now, if you'll take a look at the vertical hyperbola standard form, it looks very much like that of the horizontal. The only difference is that the y will come first. So the A's and B's will be very similar. The H and K will be similar, but the y will be positive, or it will come first, and the x will come second. So center is still HK. The vertex is A away from the center. And we'll still have these asymptotes. And again, what's an asymptote? It's a line that the curve gets closer and closer to. So let's look at an example and see how the shape is going to be different. So we'll have a y minus 1, let's say, quantity squared. We'll have that negative in there. X plus 2 quantity squared. Let's say we have over 1 and over 4. And these standard forms, they'll be equal to 1. So let's identify the center first off. So the center of this will be HK. Now notice that the H goes with the X and the K goes with the Y. That's how it's always been. But it looks switched when we have our positive and our negative values in our standard form. So the center is still going to be in this example. Our center will be H, which is what's going with the X. If it's positive, it's negative. And the Y coordinate will be with the Y. If it's negative, it's positive. Okay. So we'll have a hyperbola that will have a center at -2, +1. This is our center. Now this is where it's a little different. This number here is how we get our vertice. So we're going to move in the Y direction 2, and that's how we're going to get our vertice. Move our vertice in the Y direction. This is our A. And then we'll kind of move in the X direction from our center. And what I mean kind of move, we'll get how wide the hyperbola is. But remember, it's not an ellipse. It's not an ellipse, but it's an inside-out ellipse. So let's draw those guidelines through the center. And these guidelines will help us when we're drawing our inside-out ellipse, because we're going to take this vertice still changes, or is still the same, but now I'm going to invert, and notice now we have what's called a vertical hyperbola. Why is it vertical? Because it goes up and down. The horizontal went right and left. And how do we know that? We have an up and down if the Y comes first, and we have a right to left if we have the X coming first. So make sure you put down standard form. I'll give you a couple examples where all you'll need to do is graph, and make sure if you're having difficulties graphing these that you ask for some help. Grab a ruler, that'll help graph your asymptotes, and make sure that you turn in your standard form circles into the folder before you leave.